Gaius Julius Caesar is undoubtedly the most outstanding Roman in history.
His life as a political and military leader led him to become one of the most admired historical figures and a true legend during his own time. After his death, his figure was consolidated as a role model, and his assassination is considered one of the most renowned assassinations in history. Before we start, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content. And be sure to stick around until the end of the video, where we reveal a surprising irony about Julius Caesar's ultimate fate.
Caesar, nephew of the great general Gaius Marius, was born in Rome around the year 100 BC.
Little is known about his childhood, since the historical accounts that have come down to us, such as those of Suetonius, the famous Roman biographer and author of the Lives of the 12 Caesars, begin when Caesar was 15 years old. At that age, he lost his father. A year later, he was appointed priest of Jupiter at an unusually young age and married Cornelia, daughter of the consul Cinna, from whom his daughter Julia was born. Cinna, Caesar's father-in-law, was a close associate of Marius, and together they fought in multiple campaigns, including the civil war against Lucius Cornelius Sulla. For a brief period, Cinna ruled Rome, but his rule was cut short by his assassination. Later, Sulla, leader of the Optimates and a brilliant strategist, declared himself dictator and assumed control of the Republic, ruling with an iron fist. In those days, Caesar's name appeared on Sulla's prescriptions, a list of thousands of enemies who were to be hunted down and executed. However, thanks to the intervention of his mother Aurelia, Caesar managed to save himself. From a very young age, he proved to be a competent man. At just 18 years old, he was sent on a diplomatic mission to Asia Minor with Nicomedes, king of Bithynia. During that time, rumors arose about an alleged love affair between Caesar and the king. His first military feat was the capture of the city of Mytilene. Upon his return to Rome in 78 BC, following the death of Sulla, Caesar began a rising political career in a Roman republic that was beginning to crumble. The republican system was unable to effectively manage the vast territories that Rome controlled, allowing figures such as Sulla and Caesar to rise to prominence, although the Senate still held power. Following Sulla's death, Pompey, the consul who would become famous for his victories against Spartacus Sertorius, the kingdom of Pontus and Judea, became Rome's principal leader. Roman politics was deeply divided between different factions within the Senate, primarily the Populares and the Optimates. The Populares, the group to which Caesar belonged, sought power through the support of the Roman people, promising to distribute land and wheat, as well as passing laws to benefit the peasants. The Optimates, on the other hand, represented the more conservative aristocracy. Caesar, faced with the Optimates, approached Pompey as a strategy to advance his political career. This maneuver was consolidated when he married his daughter Julia to Pompey. Over time, Caesar obtained the most prestigious positions in the Republic and was sent to Hispania, where he carried out a tough military campaign against the Lusitanians. During this campaign, Caesar resorted to looting to obtain large amounts of spoils, always under pressure from the debts that plagued him due to the loans he requested to finance his political campaigns. After his campaign in Hispania, Caesar ventured north along the Atlantic coast of present-day Portugal until he reached the region of Galicia. After finishing his work in Hispania, he returned to Rome, where political intrigues continued. Prominent figures of the period included Marcus Tullius Cicero, Cato the Younger, and Domitius Ahenobarbus. On one occasion, Caesar was nearly assassinated during a Senate session by supporters of Cicero, reflecting growing tensions between political factions. In the year 63 BC, Caesar obtained the prestigious position of Pontiff Supreme, the same year in which the conspiracy of Catiline took place, a senator of the Populares accused of trying to overthrow the Republic, who was neutralized by Cicero. Later, in 59 BC, Caesar obtained his first consulship alongside Bibulus, whom he later politically marginalized. A year later, Caesar's political rise was consolidated when he definitively drew closer to both Pompey and Crassus, who, despite being intimate enemies, allied themselves with him. Caesar managed to mediate between the two, forming what would become known as the First Triumvirate, a political agreement between the three to govern the Republic. Each of the three leaders would receive a different military mission. Pompey was assigned to Hispania, Caesar to Gaul, and Crassus to Syria. However, Pompey did not respect this agreement, as he decided to stay in Rome to continue leading the Senate. Here it is important to distinguish between Caesar's political career and his military career. Although he had already proven to be a competent commander in the past, it was after the formation of the Triumvirate that he began to carry out his major military campaigns. In 53 BC, Crassus died in the Battle of Carrhae fighting against the Parthians in Syria.
Despite the death of one of the triumvirs, the political agreement continued.
However, the relationship between Caesar and Pompey began to deteriorate from then on. Gaul, due to its proximity to Rome, represented a strategic territory. Rome already controlled the southern area of present-day France, around the Greek colony of Massalia, and this region, already integrated into Roman administration, would serve as the starting point for Caesar's most famous military campaign. This conflict was recorded in his work, De Bello Gallico, the Gallic War. Historical sources in archaeology confirm that the Gallic campaign was brutal and merciless. Caesar and his troops destroyed entire towns and exterminated Gallic tribes in search of riches, similarly to what he had already done in Hispania. Notable battles include those at Bibracte in 58 BC and the Sambre in 57 BC, where Caesar faced Gallic armies that greatly outnumbered his own troops. In addition to facing the Gauls, Caesar also had to deal with a Germanic invasion led by a confederation of Suebi, whom he defeated at the Battle of the Vosges in 58 BC. In this intense campaign, the leadership of several of his closest officers stood out, such as Titus Labienus, Marcus Antonius, and Quintus Tullius Cicero, brother of the famous orator Marcus Tullius Cicero. After pacifying Gaul, Caesar had to confront the Germanic tribes that had crossed into Gallic territory. Anticipating a new Germanic invasion, such as the one carried out by the Suebi, Caesar decided to cross the Rhine and devastate several Germanic villages on the other side as a warning. This raid was made possible by the construction of a wooden bridge over the Rhine, completed in just 10 days. Caesar then led his troops towards a Celtic territory further north, which had never been conquered by the Romans, the island of Britain. Although he carried out 2 successful campaigns on the island, the Roman presence in Britain was not consolidated due to a greater problem on the continent. The Gallic tribes, resentful of their treatment, took advantage of Caesar's absence to revolt under the leadership of Vercingetorix, who became the leader of all the tribes of Gaul. Caesar hurriedly returned to the mainland to deal with this rebellion, which nearly defeated his army. Vercingetorix managed to defeat Caesar at the Battle of Gergovia, but the decisive confrontation took place in 52 BC in Alesia, the main Gallic city. Caesar besieged the city, but had to build a double line of palisades to defend himself against the tens of thousands of Gauls who came to the aid of Vercingetorix. Despite resistance from the Gauls, Vercingetorix eventually surrendered to Caesar, ending the Gallic War. Throughout the conflict, many Roman authors criticized Caesar for his harshness and the unnecessary repressions he carried out in Gaul, which left a deep mark on the history of his military career. The historian Velleius Paterculus mentions that the troops under Caesar's command killed around 400,000 Gauls, while Pliny the Elder raises this figure to 1,192,000. These figures have been much disputed, but thanks to recent archaeological discoveries, which have revealed a large number of destroyed settlements, it has been confirmed that the Gallic Wars resulted in the loss of a large number of lives. After the victory, the Senate, led by Pompey, ordered Caesar to dismantle his army, since his mandate was about to end. Caesar, knowing that if he complied with this order, he would be arrested and sentenced to death by the Senate, where he had few allies, requested an extension of his time in power. Failing to do so, he was declared an outlaw, and troops were sent to capture and kill him. Faced with this situation, Caesar decided to bet everything on a single action to save himself. The invasion of Italy began, an attack that started after crossing the Rubicon River in the north of the Italian peninsula. During this historic event, Caesar is said to have uttered the famous words, "Alea iacta est," or "the die is cast," which would later become etched in the collective memory. One of his officers, General Titus Labienus, defected and joined Pompey's forces. The crossing of the Rubicon was a move that probably frightened Pompey. Instead of staying in Rome to organize a defense, where he had the chance to defeat Caesar, Pompey decided to flee to Greece. Meanwhile, Caesar continued his relentless advance towards Rome, where after capturing the city, he was appointed dictator of the Republic for the first time. At this point, we can see Caesar's highest point, as his appointment as dictator is the culmination of both his political and military career. However, a long civil war still awaited him in order to remain in power, a war that would be narrated by Caesar himself in several of his works. In order to pursue Pompey, Caesar decided to retreat and embark on a pursuit that took him across the entire Mediterranean. He took the city of Marseille, which was loyal to Pompey, and then moved on to Hispania, where he defeated 8 Pompeian legions based there at the Battle of Ilerda. His main collaborator and right-hand man, Mark Antony, with growing power, remained in charge in Italy. After the campaign in Hispania, Caesar returned to Rome and then headed to Greece in 48 BC, where Pompey was already waiting for him with a considerable army. The first major battle was at Dyrrhachium, where Pompey achieved a victory. But just a month later, the famous Battle of Pharsalus took place, where Caesar defeated Pompey, despite being outnumbered. During this battle, Domitius Ahenobarbus, one of Pompey's lieutenants, lost his life. Despite surviving the battle, Pompey fled to Egypt by sea, closely pursued by Caesar, who wanted to capture him alive. However, Egypt was in the midst of its own civil war, with two brothers, Ptolemy and Cleopatra, pitted against each other for the throne. When Pompey reached the Egyptian coast and sought to gain Ptolemy's trust, he was betrayed and killed. Days later, when Caesar arrived in Egypt and learned what had happened, he decided to support Cleopatra in her fight against her brother Ptolemy. Together, they entrenched themselves in Alexandria, specifically in the royal palace, where they led an epic defense against Ptolemy's numerous army. With the arrival of reinforcements, Caesar took the initiative and left Alexandria to confront the Ptolemaic army in open field, managing to defeat them. Ptolemy drowned while trying to escape. During their stay in Egypt, Caesar and Cleopatra became lovers, and together they had a son, Caesarion. Caesar then continued his campaign in Judea and later in the kingdom of Pontus, where he conquered the region after defeating Pharnaces Secundus at the Battle of Zela. On this occasion, Caesar uttered the famous words, Veni Vidi Vinci, meaning, I came, I saw, I conquered, in reference to the speed with which he achieved victory. Back in Rome, Caesar had to face a new threat, Pompey's sons, Gnaeus and Sextus, who, along with several generals, continued the civil war. Despite Pompey's death, the Pompeian cause had not disappeared. Pompey's sons led a rebellion in North Africa, supported by the Kingdom of Numidia, ruled by King Juba I. Caesar landed in North Africa, where he annihilated the Pompeian army at the Battle of Thapsus. Juba I committed suicide after the defeat, as did the general Metellus Scipio and Cato the Younger. Not long after returning to Rome, Caesar received news that the Pompey brothers had started another rebellion, this time in Hispania, which until then seemed pacified. Thus, the final battle of the Civil War was fought in Hispania, the toughest in Caesar's career. The Battle of Munda in the year 45 BC, which took place in the south of Cordoba.
In that battle, Caesar's army faced another army commanded by Gnaeus Pompey.
The fighting was so intense and Caesar's situation became so critical that the historian Suetonius claims that Caesar contemplated committing suicide during the battle, as defeat seemed inevitable. However, in the end, Caesar's troops were victorious, and those who lost their lives were Titus Labienus, the traitor to the Caesarian cause, as well as Gnaeus Pompey the Younger. Although Sextus Pompey managed to survive, he went on to lead a fleet of pirates in the Mediterranean, until he was finally defeated by Marcus Agrippa at the Battle of Naulochus many years later. Caesar established himself as the undisputed victor of the Civil War, but a plot against him began to take shape within his own ranks, as his appointment as perpetual dictator had raised serious concerns. The possibility that Caesar aspired to become king was an enigma that we will never be able to resolve. With the support of prominent figures such as Cicero, some of his collaborators and followers drew up a plan to assassinate him. The assassination was planned for a symbolic date, the Ides of March, March 15th, during a session of the Senate. The leaders of the conspiracy, Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, managed to gather the necessary support to carry out the attack on Caesar. The dictator was eventually assassinated on that same day in 44 BC, having been stabbed repeatedly. Ironically, his body ended up lying at the feet of a marble statue of Pompey, his former rival. However, despite his death, the conspirators did not achieve their goals, as the figure of a leader in Rome was already established, and the fall of the Roman Republic was inevitable. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you want us to cover a specific topic, please write it in the comments. Give this video a like and share it so your family and friends can also learn about the truth on Julius Caesar's life. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. And don't miss our recommended video at the end. You will enjoy it. Never forget, history is the imitator of time, the repository of actions, the witness of the past, the example and warning of the present, the caution for the future.